If you find yourself constantly saying yes when every fiber of your being screams a no, if you apologize for circumstances entirely beyond your control, if the very thought of resting without guilt feels like a foreign concept, you didn't choose this path. This isn't a personality quirk. This intricate dance of self-abandonment. It was meticulously choreographed, often before you even understood the steps. Someone, perhaps unknowingly, trained you to do this. A pattern imprinted deep within your psyche during a time when your survival depended on it. But what if that training still dictates your adult life, controlling your choices, your relationships, your very sense of self? Picture this: a child, no older than 4, refuses to eat their dinner. A simple, natural act of boundary setting. But instead of gentle encouragement, a storm. Shouting. Isolation. The message, though unspoken, resonates with terrifying clarity: your needs, your desires, are secondary. Your autonomy is a threat. Love, or at least its semblance, is conditional. It's tied directly to obedience. To compliance. This isn't just about food, it's about the very foundation of self-expression being met with disapproval, even punishment. A crucial lesson is learned: to be loved, to be safe, you must conform. This conditioning isn't always overt punishment. Sometimes, it's far more insidious. Research indicates that children who received conditional praise, phrases like, "I love you when you're good," or "you're such a good boy when you listen," often develop a deep-seated belief that their worth is tied to performance and external approval. It's a subtle but potent form of emotional manipulation. Love becomes a reward, not an unconditional given. The child quickly understands: to secure affection, they must constantly perform, anticipate, and suppress their authentic self. A silent contract is signed, binding them to a life of seeking external validation. Now, fast forward decades. That child is an adult, navigating the complex landscape of romantic relationships. Do you find yourself constantly bending, sacrificing your own desires to avoid conflict, to keep the peace? Are you terrified of confrontation, believing that disagreement will lead to abandonment? This isn't coincidence. It's the direct echo of that early training. You're still operating under the same survival mechanism, believing that your partner's love, like your parents', is conditional. People pleasers report feeling a lack of authentic self in 70% of their relationships. A staggering number, revealing the true cost of this learned behavior. This pattern extends far beyond the personal. In the workplace, it manifests as chronic overworking, an inability to delegate, and an endless stream of volunteered extra tasks. You might take on projects that aren't yours, silently resent the burden, but never say no. The fear? Being seen as uncooperative. Not valuable enough. Among friends, you're the go-to fixer, the perpetual shoulder to cry on, always available, rarely asking for anything in return. Because to ask, to assert a need, feels like a monumental risk. A betrayal of the very helpful identity you've meticulously constructed, fearing disapproval or rejection. But what is the silent, unseen force that fuels this relentless need to please? It's often rooted in childhood emotional neglect. Not necessarily abuse, but a chronic absence of emotional attunement, validation, or presence from caregivers. Imagine a child whose emotions were consistently dismissed, minimized, or even punished. They learn quickly that their inner world is irrelevant, perhaps even dangerous. Adults with a history of childhood emotional neglect are 4 times more likely to experience clinical depression. The emptiness within becomes a powerful driver, pushing them to seek external validation to fill that void, often at their own expense. The physical imprint of these early experiences is profound. The brain's amygdala, our primitive alarm system responsible for fear and threat detection, can remain hyperactive in adults who experienced chronic childhood stress. This means your brain is wired to perceive even minor disagreements or potential disapproval as a significant threat. A simple request from a colleague, or a mild critique, can trigger a full-blown stress response. You're not just being sensitive, your nervous system is genuinely reacting as if your survival is at stake. It's a physiological predisposition, making the avoidance of perceived conflict almost an involuntary act. Consider the relentless criticism or shame you might have endured as a child. Perhaps your efforts were never quite good enough, or mistakes were met with harsh judgment. Studies show individuals who were frequently criticized or shamed as children are 3 times more likely to develop anxiety disorders in adulthood. This constant vigilance against perceived failure or disapproval translates directly into a heightened state of anxiety. The people-pleaser attempts to preemptively disarm any potential criticism by being imperfect, by anticipating every need, by never putting a foot wrong. It's an exhausting, unwinnable war against an internal critic that was externally installed. This pursuit of flawlessness, this desperate need to be good enough, often morphs into debilitating perfectionism. A longitudinal study found that children who perceive their parents as highly critical or controlling are 2 times more likely to exhibit perfectionist tendencies. The bar is set impossibly high, not by internal drive, but by an internalized parental voice. Every task, every interaction, becomes a high-stakes performance where anything less than perfect compliance or achievement feels like a personal failure. This isn't a healthy striving for excellence, it's a frantic effort to ward off the ghost of childhood disapproval, endlessly chasing an unattainable ideal. The constant giving, the relentless anticipation of others' needs, the suppression of one's own desires, it all exacts a brutal toll. A survey revealed 60% of people-pleasers admit to regularly sacrificing their own needs for others, leading directly to burnout. This isn't just feeling tired, it's a profound depletion of mental, emotional, and physical resources. The well runs dry. You become a shell, resentful and exhausted, yet still compelled to keep giving. Because the thought of stopping, of prioritizing yourself, triggers that deep-seated fear: will I still be valuable? Will I still be loved? Beyond fight, flight, or freeze, there exists a lesser-known, yet equally powerful, trauma response, the fawn response. This involves immediately trying to appease a perceived threat to avoid conflict. It's the ultimate people-pleasing survival strategy. If you grew up in an environment where direct confrontation was dangerous, where assertion led to punishment, fawning became your safest bet. You learn to anticipate, to placate, to charm your way out of harm's way. This isn't a conscious choice, it's an automatic, deeply ingrained reaction designed to ensure safety in unstable environments. It's a shield that, in adulthood, becomes a cage. Every yes you utter when you mean no is a micro-betrayal of yourself. Each time you silence your authentic voice, you reinforce the belief that your true self is unacceptable, unworthy, or unsafe. This erosion of self-trust is insidious. It makes decisions agonizing because your internal compass has been systematically dismantled. You become a chameleon, adapting to every external demand, losing sight of your own colors in the process. This isn't kindness, it's a form of self-abandonment, driven by a deep-seated fear of what might happen if you dared to be genuinely, unapologetically yourself. What becomes of the person underneath the mask? Why is it so hard to stop? What are the invisible strings that tether you to this pattern? It's not simply a habit, it's a complex tapestry woven from primal fears. Fears of rejection, abandonment, loneliness. The terror of disappointing others. The apprehension of conflict. The dread of not being good enough. These aren't irrational adult anxieties, they are the echoes of a child's desperate need for safety and love. They are the learned consequences of a system that taught you your worth was conditional. Each fear a tiny anchor, holding you captive to a narrative that no longer serves you. Consider the stark contrast between transactional relationships and authentic connection. A transactional dynamic, fueled by people-pleasing, operates on an unspoken ledger: I give, I sacrifice, therefore I am worthy of love's acceptance. It's a constant effort to earn your place. Authentic connection, however, thrives on mutual respect, vulnerability, and genuine self-expression. There's no need to perform, no fear of showing up as you are. One builds walls, the other builds bridges. Which reality are you unconsciously constructing in your life? The distinction is crucial, revealing the silent trade-off you've been making. The insidious truth is, this behavior often creates a self-reinforcing cycle. When you constantly prioritize others, you attract people who are happy to let you do just that. They may not be malicious, but your actions inadvertently train them to expect your compliance, to take without giving. This further validates the unconscious belief that your only value lies in what you can provide, perpetuating the pattern. It's a feedback loop, whispering that your self-sacrifice is necessary, that you are indeed only loved for what you do, not for who you are. The very relationships you hope to secure become a mirror reflecting your deepest fears. And what of the guilt? That pervasive, suffocating guilt that arises the moment you even consider a moment of rest, a pause for self-care, or heaven forbid, simply doing nothing. This isn't just a byproduct, it's a key mechanism of control. From childhood, you were likely taught, explicitly or implicitly, that your worth was tied to productivity, to being useful, to meeting others' needs. Resting, therefore, feels like an act of rebellion, a failure to uphold your perceived duty. It's the internalized voice of a caregiver, still demanding performance, even when no one else is in the room. This guilt is an invisible leash. The costs of this lifelong pattern are immeasurable. Lost opportunities for genuine connection. A stifled sense of self. Chronic stress and anxiety. Burnout. Resentment, both inward and outward. But perhaps the greatest cost is the profound sense of living a life that isn't truly yours. A feeling of being an actor in your own story, constantly performing, never quite dropping the act. The narrative of your life, written by someone else, during a time when you had no choice. But now, as an adult, the script can be rewritten. The question is, are you ready to pick up the pen? Understanding this childhood wound, acknowledging its profound impact, is the first, crucial step. It's not about blame, it's about illumination. You didn't choose to be programmed this way, but you can choose to reprogram yourself. To slowly, deliberately, unravel the knots tied in fear and necessity. It begins with noticing the impulse to say yes, noticing the surge of guilt, noticing the fear of conflict. This awareness is the key. It's the light that begins to dissolve the shadows of the past, revealing the choice that was always there, waiting to be rediscovered. The choice to reclaim your authentic self.